Inspired by Wendy's surge pricing, when were some times where there was such great backlash that a company person took back what they said it were going to do? Microsoft Xbox One was supposed to be always online and removed it after fan backlash. The internet bullied Paramount into fixing Sonic for the movies. Through much of the 20th century, the biggest beer brand in the world was Schlitz. Budweiser was a distant second and gaining ground. Schlitz's new CEO, son of the long-standing CEO, decided the way to beat Budweiser was to make beer with a shorter brewing time. He ordered the formula changed to corn syrup from malted barley, added a new yeast to cut brewing time. Overnight, consumers started complaining that the new beer was flat, cloudy, and full of flakes of yeast, which turned off the loyal following. They started recalling the beer, which left no beer to sell to the marketplace. Schlitz plunged from the #1 brand to obscurity. End-user Bosch could not have come up with a better way to sabotage their competitor. JCPenney tried a whole tactic of "we won't have any sales or coupons anymore, our prices will just always be low." Instead, sales tanked, the stock prices dropped into single digits, stores ended up closed left and right, and JCPenney barely exists anymore. OnlyFans said they were gonna ban sexually explicit content, and that had to be one of the stupidest things I ever seen, and they reversed that decision pretty damn quick as was expected. At one point when bourbon exploded in popularity largely due to growth in the SE Asian market, Maker's Mark was faced with not having enough products to meet projected demand, since it takes quite a while to produce. They announced they were going to slightly lower the alcohol percentage of their flagship product to stretch the supply. This idea went over like a lead balloon and was crushed almost immediately. The game engine Unity introduced a per-install runtime fee, meaning anytime someone installed a Unity game you made, Unity would charge you. Details as to how this would be tracked and billed, how multiple installs per user or machine would be handled, how malicious installs would be prevented, how installs from prepaid deals like Game Pass would be counted, were fully absent. Unity is one of two most popular non-proprietary game engines by far, and favored by smaller devs, who could lose all their profits with this arrangement. This alone outraged the entire game dev community. But the week of shifting explanations and rules changed on the fly really put gas on the fire. Developers began preparing to move away from Unity. The stock price crashed, massive partners like Microsoft appeared blindsided. In the end, Unity had to retract the policy and create a new one where devs could choose between the runtime fee and a tiered percentage cut the normal way. And the CEO had to step down. And then the company laid off 25 of their employees, although that was likely due to the same overgrowth that caused them to try the runtime fee in the first place. It was a massive disaster for the company, and I would say their reputation has not recovered. Netflix trying to spin off their DVD service into Qwixter, separate from its fledgling streaming service in 2011. Stock tanked 80 in part due to that, was shelved. On a side note, billionaire investor Carl Icahn bought 11 of Netflix stock at the lows for $650 million. He was going to agitate to sell the company, but the stock quickly ran up. He sold it at a 5x gain over the objection of his sum would have been worth about $2,530 today. I mean, New Coke is the famous one. In 2010, gaming company Activision Blizzard, who ran World of Warcraft among other things, proposed to put players' real names on their forum posts. This did not go well. At all. Doxing of children to make a point was involved. They did not go through with their terrible plan. This incident is usually referred to as the Real ID fiasco among players who were around at the time. Cadbury announced they were going to change their formula to include palm oil in their chocolate manufacturing process, and there was a huge uproar. Lots of people boycotted them or threatened to boycott them if palm oil was used, as it's incredibly environmentally damaging. Cadbury's walked it back shortly after and never mentioned switching the formula again. Dungeons & Dragons is owned by Wizards of the Coast, which is owned by Hasbro. I'm not sure if it was directly Wizards of the Coast or if it was Hasbro, but they wanted to change the licensing for D&D. This was going to fuck over thousands of streamers, podcasts, other types of small companies, and startups that were doing things related to Dungeons & Dragons. The backlash from the community was huge. People canceled their D&D Beyond subscriptions on a very large scale, one of the few ways they were making money. Many popular D&D podcasts and streams openly denounced the idea and started to talk about using D&D's biggest competitor instead, Pathfinder. They eventually made a half-assed statement that did not help, and a couple weeks later did a complete backtrack and apology. This was also maybe a year ago, if not more recent. Tangential. I think Wendy's branded this horribly. My first thought was, well, I guess I'll never go to Wendy's since I'll never know what things will cost before I get there. But if they marketed it as 20 off during off-peak hours or 30 after 9:30 p.m. or something, I'd probably think of going there if I needed an early or late meal. Actual surge pricing for fast food is dumb. When a school bus of kids show up on a sports or band trip, are they going to jack the prices up on all of them? Specific days times with higher lower prices seems more viable. If you follow tech, the most recent one would probably be Nvidia with the RTX 4080. At first, Nvidia launched a RTX 4080 16GB for $199 and a RTX 4080 12GB for $899. The problem was the RTX 4080 12GB used an entirely different GPU and was significantly slower rather than just being a card with less RAM, as the name implied. Nvidia unlaunched the RTX 4080 12GB and relaunched it as the RTX 4070 Ti at $799. JCPenney deciding to stop coupons in 2012 and focus on everyday low prices. Sales tanked by 25, and the new CEO who made the call was fired after 17 months on the job. When the Fine brothers announced they were going to trademark the term React in relation to YouTube videos. And the loot boxes in Battlefront 2. Just last month, WWE caused a global fan backlash when The Rock came back and forced out Cody Rhodes from wrestling Roman Reigns in the main event at this year's WrestleMania. The backlash was so severe that WWE not only put Cody back in the main event, but The Rock realized he had to turn heel, so the booing and anti-Rock chants made sense to the casual audience. Adidas burned up like $1 billion worth of products because Kanye West doesn't like Jews. Valve announced a plan to charge for mods almost a decade ago. Internet backlash against this was swift and powerful enough to get them to backtrack. It was an especially surprising move for a company that the internet considered good as a for-profit corp could be, realistically. Loblaws grocery stores saying they are discontinuing the 30 off on expiring food. A week later they changed their minds from backlash. In Canada, the grocery market is pretty much completely owned by 4 companies, which means they tried to get away with a lot of bullshit since there's virtually no competition. One of them, Loblaws, had a long-standing practice of putting 50 off stickers on items that were about to expire or produce that was beaten up. Recently, they decided that they were going to drop this 50 off to 30. I don't think they even announced anything. I'm pretty sure word just got out when employees received the new 30 off stickers. The backlash in Canada was absolutely enormous. Loblaws is widely disliked right now for using the lack of competition to gouge grocery prices, and this was just another infuriating greedy move from them. In light of the backlash, the company reversed course and kept the 50 off. When Cinchips released their new eco-friendly bag, that thing was so fucking loud anytime it crinkled. They had to change the bags back very quickly from the backlash, haha. In March 2016, Playboy magazine stopped having new pictures. Subscriptions fell 23, and it was actually through the efforts of Cooper Hefner, Hugh's son, that brought those back, saving the magazine from a likely fatal wrong turn. It may have been a publicity stunt. We will never know. https://www.foxnews.com Entertainment putted Playboy flip-flop on its no decision. Xbox One was going to have only digital game sales. They got beat up in the media so bad they quickly pivoted to also selling games on disc like before. Are not changing the recipe for shapes. https://n.wikipedia.org Wiki Sony BMG Kappa Protection Kit Scandal. There was a car rental company that installed speed monitoring devices on their cars and charged you every time you went over the speed limit. I want to say Avis didn't last long. They didn't take it back. They said we misunderstood it. We didn't misunderstand shit. To repeat, we didn't misunderstand shit. The CEO absolutely wants to implement fuck you pricing. He just forgot to wear the mask on that conference call.